All right, happy Monday, Tuesday, wherever you are. Start of August in 2025. And a few things on the agenda today. As I mentioned, please don't hesitate to drop things directly onto the agenda. I am particularly bad at pulling things down from above. I am hopeful that we'll have room. This, I've been wrong many, many times before. But hopeful that we'll have time to cover these things. And yes, thank you, Candace. Please add your name to the attendees list so we can keep track of who's able to make these time slots. Um, yeah, I think that's all. Okay. So it is release 1.4. We gave a lot of gaps extensions. Not all of them made it through. That's okay. Hopefully they'll make it through next time. One of the things that I think Shane mentioned in one or more comments was this idea that even if a gap didn't quite squeeze into this particular release, we should keep on working on it and hope that it's in a good place to make it to the next release. So 1.5 in this case. And in parallel, hopefully we can get this release process simplified to a point where each individual release is much, much faster. So step by step, we're getting there. These are the things that are actually on track for 1.4. Candace, I think you had some questions about backend TLS a little bit further in the agenda, so we'll definitely get to those. Supported features, I think this one's in a good state. This one feels almost done. Mike, I think I saw you on this call. How are you feeling about configurable retries? Are you the right person for this?
Yeah, I am going to be the right person for this. I have some time coming up, and also Jackson, who's on the call today, recently joined our team and might be able to help me out with this too.
Awesome. Very cool. Great. And then next up, oh, wow. That, no pressure. I hate to put anyone on the spot, but I realized that usually what we do, if I'm paying attention, is we'd give people a chance to introduce themselves early in the meeting. No pressure, but if there's anyone new on the call that wants to say hi, what brings them here, give like a few minutes for that, but no worries if you don't want to.
Yeah, you guys able to hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Mike kind of just introduced me, but I am new on the team and will hopefully be contributing to this project. So happy to be here, and I'll just kind of be listening in today.
Awesome. Great to have you. Very cool.
Thank you.
Nice. Anyone else that I might have missed? Cool. All right. Well, awesome. And then everything that is targeting experimental here, we've got mesh resource, default gateways, HTTP route level auth, and client cert verification for gateway listeners. So even though there's a number of features that didn't make it across the line, this is still going to be a packed release. The key takeaway here is we're looking at what we're effectively calling code freeze of August 26th. Sorry, that basically means all code needs to be merged, including most notably API definitions. And for these ones, you need to have, if you're targeting GA or standard channel, the bar is a bit higher. You need to have conformance tests in place, and you need to have evidence that you have multiple implementations that are passing those conformance tests.
Basically that means you have to have conformance tests, and there must be conformance reports that have 3 implementations passing those conformance tests.
Yep. So yeah, I know that's a tight timeline for these ones. I think we have a good path for backend TLS. I think supported features is close.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no conformance test really needed for that one. So,
okay.
And then this one, I also don't think there's really anything we can do for conformance tests actually, because I don't know what.
Yeah, because it's yeah. it's mainly informational.
Yeah.
It's
Cool.
mainly used as a place for people to attach policy.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Um,
reflect on any conditions. Is it
No,
expected by
not that I know of.
No, because the conditions array is ordered, and it's supposed to be ordered in the like it's ordered by the parent, and so it's sliced by the parent. So the name of the rule, it's helpful for the messaging conditions, but the message is human readable and not parsable by definition anyway. So yeah, it's really mainly useful for logs and stuff like that, and also for targeting policy selectors. That's the main reason why people have asked for it.
Okay, thanks.
No worries.
Cool. Yeah, so I think that's all for release updates. I do want to call out that Rosti on kind of extended team here at Google has added 2 breaking changes to TLS route and done a version bump in the process for 1.4. So what this means is the first breaking change he made is he made host names required on TLS route, because there's not really much you could do without that, I guess. And then second, set max items to 1 instead of 16 here. This is the second change. And yeah, the same, very similar reason of there's no matchers in TLS route. So like, what are you going to do with more than one of these things? You can imagine a future where you could have ALPN matchers here. So like a list still seems to mostly make sense, I think, but leaving it at 1 while we don't have any matchers also seems to make sense to me.
I guess my question around that is, yeah, is this lowering the limit until we see a need to potentially raise it? Because in alpha, we can lower it, but we can't raise it. And once it goes past alpha, then we can raise it, but can't lower it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense then. Just want to make sure we're like boxing ourselves in if we think we might need the former state at some point. Okay, we're good though.
Yeah, but that's exactly why we want to make the changes now. Candice?
Just had a quick question. I have never seen very much documentation on TLS route. So I was wondering whether this kind of change will make it into some kind of documentation for TLS route.
I think we don't have much documentation for TLS
Yeah.
TLS mainly because no one's ever written it. So yes, if I think part of release will be that one of us will need to go through and check, and see if we have any documentation for TLS route, as well as calling this out as a major breaking change.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of in a roundabout way trying to say that this feels like documentation by de facto documentation. Like we don't have any documentation, so we start making changes to enforce the enforce the standard or documentation here.
To some extent it is, yeah, but it's also that the current state actually doesn't really make sense. Having hostname not be required and allowing more than one rule when there's no matcher in the rule to tell them apart, it doesn't. Neither of those things actually makes any sense. TLS route doesn't work without a hostname. I mean, it can't, like, it could conceivably work. You could attach a TLS route to a listener that did have a hostname, but if you attach a TLS route without a hostname to a listener without a hostname, that's like I guess maybe it kind of works a little bit in that you're just
like
saying all host names get forwarded through to the back end, but you may as well just be using TCP route at that point.
Yes.
So it may seem obvious to you, because you've been kind of discussing this over time, but these kind of things were not necessarily obvious to me, and maybe to other people.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's good feedback. This is, this is a place we've lacked. I mean, basically every route that isn't named HTTP route, and maybe to a lesser extent gRPC route, is really poorly documented, if at all. I mean, that's just the reality right now. I know that Rosti is going to do what he can to get this GA ready in 1.5, and I know that will involve docs. I hope that others are able to help, fill in gaps for docs too. I know TLS route in particular is one that we've wanted to get across the line for a long time. We just haven't had enough people to get it done. And
It
so-
is, believe it or not, it's on my list.
Oh,
But
cool.
but I still don't know. So this is why I'm like, I don't know where these ideas that Rosti's putting in came from. So I know we have no gap, and I know we have like very little documentation on it. So yep, you can count on me to help do that in the future, but I can't pull it out of thin air necessarily.
Yeah, I think practically what it means is that one of us who have been here for a long time needs to do a first pass on the documentation so that we can like write up a few things about how it works. I think we did actually make a retrospective gap for TLS route at some point that I don't think we've like kind of filled out all that much, but that probably is the right place for now for a bit of explanation as to what's going on here and how it works. Speaking of that, Ricardo asked in the channel, like, if we don't have a host name, how do you do a catch-all? The intent of TLS route is that you catch-all via like a wildcard domain. I think it would be pretty unusual that you would be hosting with a like complete star wildcarded certificate. And so the idea here is that the host name that you have in your TLS route matches either the domain that's in the certificate, if you're doing like a star.example.com, or like a domain that matches that. So like if your certificate is star.example.com and you have foo.example.com, then that's fine. But but it would be pretty weird to do a a completely blank hostname matcher here, because as we said before, that would mean that all you're doing is forwarding TCP streams there anyway. You're not actually looking at the TLS stream, which is what TLS is for. It's for inspecting the SNI and routing differently based on different SNIs. So yeah, I think your feedback there is pretty fair, Candice, that there's not a lot of explanation about what this is. There's a bit of explanation about what this is for, but you have to know where to look, and it would be better to have that documented in more places. I agree. I certainly anticipate that we will get feedback about this set of baking changes, because I know that users are absolutely using TLS route in production at the moment. Absolutely, they are. They shouldn't be, but we haven't moved fast enough on this, and so people are like, no, I have to do this, and so they are using it now. So yeah, this is going to cause some operational pain for folks for sure.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, thanks, Candice, and whoever's writing notes as well. And yeah, I think this is going to be hopefully our only breaking change in 1.4. But yeah, really hope we can limit. I'm glad that Rosti is making this follow-up still in the same release, so that hopefully we can get any breaking changes out in this one go. If people want to spend an extra few minutes looking at TLS route and saying, hey, there's this other thing that feels broken, this would be a really, really good time to do that, because hopefully we can get anything out of the way in this release. Next thing I wanted to cover is kind of a release postmortem. We kind of did this. Postmortem may not be the right term. I don't know what to call it, but after 1.3, we had some discussion in one of our community meetings about what we could do better. I think at least some of the ideas there have been implemented, like lengthening some cycles, shortening other cycles, and giving a more predictable release timeline, and kind of yeah. So I think there are some things that have gone better this time. But one of the things I would like to, I don't want this particular meeting to be a release postmortem. We've got lots of other more interesting things to talk about today. But what I think would be useful is to get some feedback on what would be a good way to do this, right? Like, is this should we schedule a one-off discussion for people that care about release? I don't know. Should we just have an open form or suggestion where you can just drop, things, anonymous feedback of what went well, what went poorly? I'm open to ideas here. I do want to, keep on improving here. I think there was definitely, yeah, retrospective. That's a good word. There's definitely room for improval on what we're doing here. And yeah, that's all. So if anyone has ideas on how we can best gather feedback here, I'm all ears. And hopefully we'll get something kicked off in the next few weeks. Cool. Okay. I think with that, Candace, you're up next.
Okay, this is just revisiting a topic that I brought up last time. Most of the players are not here, it looks like, so I'm not sure what we'll decide in this meeting. If necessary, I can postpone it for another week, but I do believe that this might be something that we either need to hurry up on or postpone for the next release. So this is just an observation that we had no status for backend TLS policy. We had no definition of what an invalid status was, and Norwin had created a new GEP that talked about if there was if one of the CA certificate references was invalid. So there could be, as I mentioned, there could be up to 8 CA certificate references, and the GEP, and if it's invalid, it also blocks all traffic. So this is discussed in the GEP, and we've had some debate over what part of this should be implementation dependent, what part of this should be specified in the API. And there's Katarina put up a proposal as well. Katarzyna put up a proposal as well, and there's a couple of different things to think about. So, I mean, in my opinion, I don't think that we should mark it invalid for one invalid CA certificate ref, unless there's only one CA certificate ref on the backend TLS policy, because that would prevent and block all traffic for any other of the certificates that are valid in the backend TLS policy. It could also introduce cases where, backend TLS policy is working fine for 6 months with 2 certificates, and then one expires, and then all traffic is blocked at that point. Or one, I don't think we're going, I mean, it's invalid for one reason or another, or it gets deleted. Let's say that it gets deleted, the certificate gets deleted, and it's no longer discoverable by the system that looks up certificates, and then it would block all traffic suddenly for all services that the backend TLS policy is serving. So I don't know what the solution is, but I think we need to either hurry up and decide for 1.4 or postpone it until 1.5.
Mike, you've got a hand?
Yeah, I guess like my perspective on this is just trying to think about like what is even possible to do and like what makes sense. So I'm just trying to like think through the actual behavior in my head. So the reason we have a list is because like your comment here, like we can specify multiple CA certs that we're saying the client should attempt to use these in order to connect to the back end. It feels out of scope to me to try to somehow create an enforcement mechanism on the actual backend that you're connecting to, when what we're trying to do is really program the client. So the fail close thing, like that feels like a different functionality, when like if we have a list, we can either not try the next one or we can try the next one.
So, oh, go ahead, Nick.
Oh yeah, I was going to raise my hand. Yeah, so I think there's two important things to remember here that we try to have as guidelines. Firstly, it should not be required for implementations to unwrap TLS certs to be able to fulfill the spec. So like you shouldn't have to check the expiry, to sort of check if the CA is invalid.
Oh,
That's
I didn't
like,
even realize we were getting that deep into it. I thought we were just
Yeah, so-
level,
yeah,
like
so-
literally if this exists in the cluster.
yeah. So like it is mentioned in the PR. I was just reading it. So yeah, I think I'll put a comment on here today, but I think I agree that I think the behavior here should be as it should be if there is one valid certificate reference, then the policy should be accepted and things should work. It's only when there is 0 valid references that it should be not accepted, which is that, I mean, that's the general sort of rule for partial validity anyway. If there are if there are some references that are no good, then you can still accept the route or whatever the object is, and you just add the resolved refs condition. So I think that that seems to me to be the right way to go here. I know that this is TLS, and so as always, it's slightly different. But I think that Mike's point here about this being, about describing the behavior of the client is fair. Like the worst case scenario here is, as Rob says there, like that if that your client works with the ones that are valid and doesn't work for the ones that are not, right? Like if you have certificates added to this thing that are not present or invalid for some other way, then the client won't be able to connect. By allowing the invalid config here, you are reducing the scope of a problem rather than increasing it. And so I think it's fine. So yeah, I think to me that makes sense. I will have a look over the chat on this one and put some comments on there. But I think that to answer your question, Candice, I think we should definitely move forward with this. We should clear this up during this API refinement phase. This is exactly the sort of thing that I would expect to come up in the API refinement phase, that we sort of start implementing it, we start looking at it, and we're like, oh, this doesn't make sense. And so this is where we define that sort of rules. That's what API refinement means.
+1. Okay, well, I think we're actually on the same page here. So yeah, I've already left some comments on there. Maybe Nick or Mike, if you want to drop some comments as well, that would help. And,
yep, I'll make sure.
Cool.
It's a very short gap change or gap.
Yep.
Cool. And then next up, looks like it's you, Nick.
Yeah, so I just wanted to remind everybody about the implementations page. I saw a PR for adding a new implementation to the implementations page. I have made the changes to the implementations page recently that says soon. I was hoping to do this much earlier, but this release cycle has been busier than I thought it was, and I've been spending my time reviewing things rather than doing policy stuff. But the new process for the implementations page is that associated with each release, there will be a review of the implementations page that sort of does a standard set of things. And as part of that, it will it will the first time it will move implementations that have not submitted any conformance reports into a stale section. They will be officially marked as stale implementations. If you have submitted any conformance reports at all, even if they don't fully pass anything, then you will be partially conformant. And to be conformant, you must pass conformance tests for all claimed features for at least one of the modes that you support. One of the problems with our conformance system is that we've got, I think there's about 3 or 4 dimensions along which you can have sort of different implementations. You can have different modes, you can have different versions, you can have a couple of other ways that you can, there's the profiles as well. And so just turning this into sort of effectively a one-dimensional sorting bucket of conformant is actually a little harder than it would sound. But that's the goal here, to be able to sort of mark on the implementations page that conformant implementations also imply is under active development and will be continued to be updated as we do Gateway API releases. And that's the point of that change. There is a larger concern here, which is that as part of the Kubernetes organization, we are not allowed to have pages that encourage people towards third-party implementations or speak about them as though they are the way to do things. That's one of the reasons why we don't have how-tos that say install this implementation. We are it's actually against the Kubernetes project as a whole's the documentation policy to do that. That's why we have a install an implementation link to implementations page. Is because we can't be giving the appearance of picking any implementations. That's the reason for all of those changes, and I just wanted to make sure to remind everybody about that. If you do have a new implementation and you're watching this, I would love to see you make a PR to the implementations page, but I strongly recommend that you submit a conformance report first. Then if you have a new implementation, the way to sort of announce your new implementation is to submit a conformance report. You can add yourself to the implementations page in the same PR that you add your conformance report. That's fine, but there needs to be a conformance report. Otherwise, in the future, we will only have implementations on the implementations page that have submitted at least one conformance report with some rules about staleness and some other and how all those conformance reports can be and so on and so forth. So those rules are already written down on the implementations page, and I anticipate that I may need to tweak them as I do the first implementations page review, which I'm not 100% sure if it's worth doing one before the 1.4 release and then doing another one immediately afterwards, or if I'll just wait until after the 1.4 release. Opinions welcome there.
Yeah, I think it's fine. As long as we are signaling very loudly that this is going to happen, I think the very likely result after 1.4 is that we're going to have 20 stale implementations, maybe not quite 20, but a large number, and that'll be a pretty large shift. So
to be clear, part of the process is that there is a right of reply that I will say, hey, there's a bunch of implementations have moved to stale. If you maintain an implementation, I encourage you to check and to submit a conformance report, and then you can move to partially conformant. But again, I think in the 1.6 timeframe, probably in the 1.6 review, will be when we will remove all of the stale implementations from the implementations page, and you will need to submit a conformance report to come back.
Cool. Let me be real quick here. I've got one more that I will try and be quick with. This is multi-cluster inference gateways. So there's an extension called Gateway Inference Extension. That's another SIG network subproject, whatever, related, obviously, as the name implies, very closely related to Gateway API. What it introduces is a custom kind of backend. It's called Inference Pool, and it allows you to do some really custom routing with something like we call Endpoint Picker, and that runs in each cluster and has some custom logic that says, hey, here's how you choose the best pod for this request, right? It's very focused on LLM routing, and it could be practical in other cases, but it's primarily useful for long-lived requests, right? Because this adds some non-trivial overlap to go, for every single request to call out to some endpoint picker type component and then call back, and like it's some overhead, but the overhead has generally been worthwhile for requests that are long-running and very expensive. So with that said, the API surface looks roughly like this. You got a selector and you got an extension ref. Not a whole lot to cover there, but what I do want to say is imagine what you'd do if you wanted to make that multi-cluster, right? So imagine you wanted to be able to target an inference pool that spanned clusters. In one world, you might actually have to track two different sets of endpoints. You might have to track what are the extensions and what are the backends, what are the model server backends. There's a whole lot of discussion here in this doc, and I've dropped updates in SIG multi-cluster and the inference working group, like all kinds of different meetings, got lots of good feedback. This is more informational that the discussion is happening. If you care about the intersection of multi-cluster and gateway API, I think whatever we end up deciding on here could end up, this is largely mirrored on what we're already recommending for service import or like multi-cluster services, but is a bit different. And so if there's interest in the intersection, I just wanted to give this kind of shout out that conversation is happening. We scheduled a one-off meeting on Thursday to discuss more. But if you're interested, just ping me. Trying to, open it up to as many people as are interested. But yeah, it's too in depth to cover in this meeting, so just informational only at this stage. Rose, it looks like you're up next if you're on the call. Yeah.
Hello. Sorry, this time is like so terrible for me. My brain is a little fried. I just got off work.
Oh no.
I strongly sympathize. So yeah, that's cool.
So what I'm talking about today is I have the heart of the documentation rebuild, build step hook mostly finished. I need to write a lot more tests, but this is basically what will allow us to ensure that when we are reorganizing the documentation, moving the pages around, this build step will make sure that we're not breaking any links and we have resilient linking. I need to write some more tests, and I need to write some more tests so I make sure that this works perfectly, so we're not slowly breaking the documentation on each build. But essentially, I just wanted to shout out that this is going on. I have this here in this GitHub repo.
Awesome. That looks great. Yeah, I'll definitely have a look. With the release stuff going on, I haven't spent enough time looking at your proposal here. So I will have a look at it in the next little bit. And see, but yeah, look, from what I can see in a extremely quick look at the outline you've got there, it looks great. And yeah, I think definitely having a redirect manager like that is very useful. Yeah, I've worked on some docs.
This is incredible. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is very, very cool. I am looking forward to seeing it in action. Yeah, cool. Well, happy I got to be the first star of your repo, and here's to many more. Cool.
It's
Thanks for all the work.
I was gonna say, it's great to have someone like really deeply investing in kind of the front end website experience, because that's something we haven't really had for a long time. So yeah, just appreciate
Yeah.
the effort here.
Yeah, huge +1. Awesome. Well, yeah, don't hesitate to ping me or anyone on Slack. What time zone? It doesn't matter, but feel free. I'm in the U.S. West Coast, so if I have any overlap with you, feel free to ping me.
So I'm in Central Time. I live in
Oh, cool.
Minnesota, but
Nice.
but so like this meeting is exactly at 5 p.m. right after work for me.
Yeah,
So it's just like,
that's rough.
yeah.
Yeah, I strongly sympathize. This meeting starts at 8 a.m. for me. So yeah, it's roll out of
That's
bed,
rough.
roll into this meeting. So yeah, like I 100% get doing sucky time zone meetings. So yeah, thank you for coming, and thank you for the awesome work.
Yeah, +1. Cool. Aryan, are you on the call?
Yes. Hey guys.
Hey.
So yeah, this is about like X.z. We recently merged this for experimental getting via route filter. So I have a question. Are we going to extend this for meshes as well? I know this is for the north-south right now. So will it be for the east-west as well, Nick, in future?
So there's I would doubt it that this specific design will happen for the east-west. There's a whole other gap talking about east-west or sea. And like so currently this the X.Z behavior is only defined for usage like when the HTTP route is attached to the gateway. So
Okay. So should we add a cell validation in the HTTP routes? Like if it's not for gateways, we'll not let any user add the X.z.
I'm reluctant to make it
I think
that
that's a big
hard, I think.
TBD.
Yeah, I think it's better to just say for now that it's not supported. And like if putting cell validation in there sort of stops anybody from like messing with it and seeing what they can do with it. I'd rather like I don't want people to get the idea that you can do that and have it be something you should be doing. But if people want to try it out and see if it makes sense, then like I kind of don't want people to stop like being able to fiddle with it, but I want us to be clear in the spec that right now it's only supported to do this for north-south. As I do the API PR, part of what I do in there will be saying, this filter is only supported for north-south use cases. That is where the HTTP route is attached to a gateway, or to a listener set. So yeah, but I don't want to like hard block that in case we decide to change it later. Mike?
Yeah, just like, so this is something that for the east-west auth work that we've been discussing, and that proposal unfortunately slipped and it isn't going to make it 1.4, but we're going to continue working on it with hopes to bring something for 1.5. But even with that, though, the scope that we're focusing on there was much more constrained. It was really around focusing on like identity-based service accounts, likely as kind of a first scratch at it. But a few of the existing mesh implementations like do have a really robust auth policy engines that can support other things like JWT auth, and we've seen like some like large enterprise deployments use things like that to integrate with their like off Kubernetes services or some kind of other identity provider. So it's something that I don't think we want to rule out for mesh at this point, but it's definitely like not within the scope of anything that we've looked at yet.
I see. So my only concern is if sorry, go ahead, Rob. I can talk later after.
Yeah, maybe we're gonna ask the same thing. How do we? Arian asked me some good questions before this meeting, and I didn't have good answers, so I figured can discuss them here too. But like, if you're a mesh implementation or if you're a mesh user, I don't know, like, what's your experience with this filter? Like, does a mesh just reject the route if it has this filter on it, I guess? Maybe that's the only thing you can do. Is there something better? I almost recommended like VAP basically like validating emission policy where you say like,
So
I'm a mesh, I don't support this. When I see this used with my mesh, I'm just not going to touch it. I'm going to reject it outright.
yeah,
Like,
to
I
me,
don't know.
that comes under the current rules for for unsupported filters. Like it's not required to support all of the filters that we have available in HTTP route, and it's expected that if you don't support one, that rule that uses the filter will be rejected. So if that's the only rule in the HTTP route, then that means that the HTTP route will not be accepted. I actually don't. That's the way I think it works, but I'm actually not 100% confident that that's not how that's our conformance test check. But in any case, the intent is that if you have a rule that has a filter configured that you don't support, you should not be processing that rule. Like that's sort of the current thing. So if there's an extension ref and you don't support the extension ref, it is expected that you say, I can't support that extension ref, that filter extension ref. I cannot support this rule. And you don't program that rule. And so that's the case for if you don't support one of the extended included in the API filters as well.
That makes sense to me. Because, yeah, I think that it doesn't like unaccept or detach the route completely. It's in like a partially invalid state or something like that. And
Yep.
it's a fail closed behavior because basically it can't make a decision, so the decision is no.
Yeah.
So I have one more question. Like, what is the problem of adding a cell validation in the routes if the route is for the mesh? We can lift off the validation if we ever plan to support this, right?
Because from like a mesh implementation perspective, it prevents us from experimenting and doing kind of off-spec things with it. I don't know if that's a great justification, but
so you mean like meshes want to implement this?
Mesh may want to implement it. I don't think any of the mesh implementations know yet if they want to implement this.
Yeah.
But if we put in cell rules, then they can't without forking the CRD and removing the cell.
And whereas if we have a non-starter to actually do any experimentation with.
Yeah, we do have plenty of other places where, because cell is only new, like ish. We do have plenty of other places where we say this: if you do this, it's not supported, and we don't have cell rules to stop you from doing it. So like, could we add the cell rules? Sure, totally. Should we? Like, I don't know. I'd rather, like, I don't feel like that this is a strong enough, definitely not, that it's worth sort of stopping people from writing their implementation to support doing this. Because that's the thing, right? Like, that's guidance for implementations. The spec is expected to be guidance for implementations, and implementations are expected to read it and say and do what it says. And if you don't support doing the thing, then you shouldn't do it. And if you don't, if you're attaching a HTTP route to a service or anything else that's not a gateway, then like you shouldn't, to be conformant. But that doesn't mean you can't do a private experiment where you like try it out and see if you can make it work and see if it makes sense. But we wouldn't be approving anything that wanted to change that immediately. But that means that then you can, if you do want to take this thing and say, no, I think we should do this in mesh, then you can say, hey, I built an experiment that does this. Here's my fork of whatever implementation. You can have a look. Here's how it behaves. Here's what I think is good. Here's what I don't think is good. I'd rather have people be able to experiment in that way than completely stop them from doing it.
Okay. And if somebody has thought about, sorry, go ahead.
Do you think it makes sense? Like, I think I get the rationale to avoid cell validation to prevent this directly in the HTTP route. Do you think it makes sense to have, I'm thinking specifically for mesh, where mesh, we have basically said, hey, there's going to be at most one mesh in a cluster. In that case, does it make sense for that mesh to bundle a VAP that says that basically prevents any unsupported features like this from being set? This one feels particularly like if I forget to do like a set header, like that's bad, but not as painful as like skipping off entirely. For example, right? Like this one feels like it could be real bad.
So, I mean, I think that's one of those things where that's a may, right? Like implementations may include validated emission policy to control whatever they like. you know, like the you know, so they can do that, like, but I don't think that. So I think that there is a slight problem in that when we add the mesh resource, it will make it easier to define what having multiple mesh implementations in a cluster would look like. That is one of the downsides of adding a mesh resource, is because there's a cluster level resource that describes a mesh. It may make it easier to be able to define what happens when you have multiple meshes in a cluster. That will kind of suck for the current status implementations on things that do not have controller name namespace status. Service is a good example here. I suspect that probably what we will need to do is we will end up needing to namespace the any conditions that we say you should add to service with the controller name or something like that. So, but that is a TBD, because like that's part of the thing that we need to think about for the currently open mesh resource gap.
Yep.
So yeah. So I don't. I think that it's 100% fine in my mind. It's 100% fine for mesh implementations to include a validating emission policy that says I expect to be the only mesh installed in the cluster. If you try and do stuff that does not reflect that, then my install includes a validating emission policy that will stop that from happening. That is you may do that, but you know, I don't want to be too prescriptive about exactly how that happens. Ian?
So even if you expect there to be like one exclusive mesh for the cluster, there could potentially be multiple gateways also in that cluster.
Mhm.
Like I've run installs like that. Would that affect those gateways?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so, like-
think the one I was, I had in my mind, right? This is imaginary, but in my head, because it's mesh, we have more options. And so we've said, whenever you attach a route to a service, that means mesh, right? And so, an HTTP route, a VAP can just say, whenever I see an HTTP route attached to a service that has this filter, I'm going to reject it. That's it, right? And so that would not affect gateways directly, but it could affect routes that tried to attach to both a mesh and gateway, I guess. But
yeah, but I mean, even in that case, you should be rejecting only the parenting to the service, not
Yeah,
the
right.
to the gateways.
Yeah.
It's expected when you process HTTP routes that each implementation that processes a HTTP route, as tracked via a HTTP route attaching to something that then falls under the implementation scope, it's expected that each parent ref status is tracked separately. It's actually on my to-do list, hopefully before the 1.4 release, to add some conformance tests for each route type that validate that when you have a HTTP route with a gateway parent ref and a mesh parent ref, that when you are in a gateway, you don't touch the mesh parent ref, and vice versa. It should be that you don't, when you have a gamma parent, you should not, if there is a gateway parent and there is status associated with that gateway parent, your gamma implementation should not be touching the gateway parent status, because otherwise you can end up with implementations fighting over the status and producing constant updates and stuff. That is definitely expected currently, but we do not have conformance tests to validate it. We had a bug in Cilium where we did that, where we changed all parents, because all of our test things only had a single parent, and so changing only the relevant parent and changing all parents was the same. And then so once I started doing stuff with gamma implementation, then it got weird, and so I had to write some tests to cover those cases. So so I have tests basically kind of ready to go. I just actually need to do the work to add them to the conformance tweet. So that is definitely on my list for before the code freeze.
Cool.
I have one last point. I know there's a proposal from Lior for the East-West authorization policies, and assume if we have the similar mechanism like X.Z, like this, what we are proposing here for meshes, So this one would take precedence before that, right? In terms of ordering, like the filter ordering. X.Z would be the first one that would kick in, and then the authorization rules, like allow, deny, whatever the
One of
policy
the
you have.
one of the reasons to add this as a filter is to allow you to specify the order. The filters thing, actually, the filters array, it is an array of filters. I think we've never really defined the
No, it's
ordering matters there, but this is where this is like we have left it specifically undefined, but this one is actually going to add part of implementing auth is we need to say no, actually ordering matters.
But that's just within the scope of the filters on HTTP route. I think the question is more of like, so the east-west authorization gap that isn't making it into this scope was proposing a new resource. So a separate resource for this would be outside the filter chain, and you would have to figure out some logic around like
Yeah,
how and
I think
what
it's
applying
it's
these things.
yeah, I think it's really important to remember here that the XDOR, the reason this is north-south is this is designed for users, not for applications. So like the intent here is that you have a client that is a browser that is connecting to your application, and this is for adding OAuth or other browser-based methods to the request. So it is not to do OAuth for service-to-service OAuth. It is intended for browsers, for user browsers to do auth. That's why it's north-south. The east-west auth is about application talking to application. Generally, you're not having a browser talk to an application run a browser that then talks to things. So there's a bunch of mechanisms that work slightly differently. It's not expected that there is a user there to sort of click boxes that say, yes, I do that. And it's not expected that there is a person that is the identity that you are guaranteeing. It is a workload that is the identity that you're checking against rather than a person. But this one is about authenticating a person and authorizing a person, and the east-west one that Lior is specifying is more about authenticating workloads. So unless you are running like headless, like remote terminals inside a cluster, and having those remote terminals talk to backend services via a mesh, then like the existing sort of idea of XDOR is not really what that proposal is for. So like that's why I've kind of been like, why would you do that? Because there is an implicit assumption there that this is a human using a browser that is that the north-south XDOR support is for.
Okay, I mean, like the intention for asking that question is right now it's separated. I know like that one is for east-west, this one is for north-south. Assume we have a like north-south ODZ policy, the allow deny kind of policies. We would want this to be in action before that ODZ policy, right? This would be our first entry point after TLS termination, right?
I would expect that if you're talking about like a mesh architecture and you have an auth policy in a HTTP route on like the north-south ingress gateway or something like that, separately you might also have like within your mesh your ingress gateway to backend of some sort written with like a mesh auth rule. Like let's set aside whether that's a gateway API or a mesh specific config at this point. Ultimately, like those are two different connections. So your client is allowed to reach the gateway because of the auth rule that you wrote in the HTTP route. And then what might happen is the gateway is not allowed to connect to the backend. So it fails, the client gets a 500 or something like that. Not because the client's unauthorized, but because the gateway was unauthorized. So you're kind of looking at like it's like a logical and situation. So yeah, the client needs to be able to connect to the gateway, then the gateway needs to be able to connect to the backend.
If the question you're asking is, I already have a policy that does this, that does the same thing, that does north-south auth, then like it's kind of up to you as to how you determine the priority, right? Like because you've got an implementation specific policy. If it was me, I would probably say yes, do the upstream one first, and then do any other ones afterwards. But again, like I would say you shouldn't really be using that for east-west because probably that's not what you want, right? Like because it's designed for users and it's intended to be able to do
I
a
see.
full OAuth flow, right? Like or something or similar. You know, where you don't want a back end doing like a redirect to a page where it has to submit a you know, where it has to like put in a username and password. Yeah, you want that to be a little bit more transparent than that.
I see. Okay, I'll just go through this again. I'm just confused with one thing, like I'll check it on sides because Istio, the way it works is assume you have a Istio ingress gateway and you add a HTTP route for it and with this x.z and you already have a Istio.z policy as well on this ingress gateway. So Istio.z policy is added on the listener and I guess this would be added on the route. So Istio.z policy would kick in first before this. So and this if this is OIDC OAuth, this should be before anything else.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the Istio setup works, but like I would have thought that like, yeah, like again, like that seems to me to come under the you know, the hey, there's an implementation specific thing about that's already doing the same config. It's kind of up to the implementation which way around they do it. You should do whichever way makes most sense for you.
I would suggest opening an issue in the Istio upstream repo, so the Istio/Istio repo, and basically like ask the question about like how should this be expected to work there, because Istio Auth policies do a lot more, and they also kind of combine north-south and east-west rules into a single policy. So it's potentially more confusing to look at. Because you don't have as strict a separation there. So yeah,
Okay.
I just open an issue in this Istio repo.
Sure. Fine. Thanks, guys.
Again, thanks for asking questions. Like they are good questions to ask that I just hadn't realized we hadn't answered. So yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Fine. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
See you.
Thanks.
There you go.
See you later. Bye.